be the host.
I'm the host. What up, partners? My name is Kyle Phegley, and I hereby declare this meeting of the Egalitarian Brotherhood of Former Wizard Magazine employees to order. You want just right there? Is that a wireless?
It is.
I'm just gonna use that one. Then Mel, you use that. Yeah, I'm just gonna stand up.
Great turnout today.
He's gonna turn it on.
He's a
No, it's on.
teacher. Oh, yeah.
It's on.
Professor
It's on.
Phegley.
Right. Well, for everybody, for the two people who stumbled in here to take a nap, and you didn't know, this is an issue of Wizard, which I call the Comics Magazine. I think it was originally called The Guide to Comics. Eventually, does anybody remember what was the final tagline that the internet got really mad? They took comics out of the tagline and it became something else. Beginning
The Guide to Pop Culture.
The magazine of
The Guide to
Pop Culture. That was the death knell of Wizard when they changed the Guide to Pop Culture. I call it the Comics Magazine. Here are some people that you know and love. Here's Dr. Melvin Caylo.
Oh my God!
Awesome.
No!
I put Mel first because I got more good photos of Mel looking through old issues of Wizard than anybody else on the panel. And his famous chili cook-off winning, and his famous Pac-Man being.
Oh, God, dude.
We also have Matt Senreich.
Help us.
I don't know why I couldn't find like a more wacky photo of you. I could only find a circle of your
I
head.
always wore something on my head of a mask. I was Galactus for a very long time.
There's a Galactus one. Ricky, I could not find any one of you either, but I did find this crappy grainy picture from Wizard TV of you in the library.
Oh my God, I forgot about Wizard TV.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I had to get back. Too close. I'll just project and hold it. I'll hold it 4 inches. It's working. All right, okay, it's working. So here's Ricky in the library on Wizard TV. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. Then we have Ben Morse, maybe more popularly known as the Eternal called Gary. From the Eternals.
That was a hard one. Oh, wait. See, they didn't let you in yet.
Oh, they didn't let the people in yet? Okay, we're going back.
What the hell?
There was a line. There was a line.
Okay, there were more people.
Oh man, this is way better.
There were people here.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
You guys squatted. They squatted in the room.
Original people who sat through adult coloring book to be part of this, I love you. New people, I'm getting to know you. We're gonna see how much I love you.
What panel do you guys think you're here for?
You were right.
Years ago, I did a panel at San Diego, and there was like a packed room for like a comic book journalist.
Things just got real. Suddenly it's a very different feel.
There's a crowd. There was a reunion, and now the panel begins. Years ago, I did a panel at, there was a comic book journalism panel at San Diego, and then there was like a whole room full of people, and then we got up there and we sat in front and we were like, hey, what are you guys here for? And a girl was looking on her phone and she goes, Teen Wolf is next. Okay, I'm sorry to apologize. So here we are again. Welcome. People who are waiting in the hall. Do you feel gratified to see smiling faces up here at you? Yes, fists in the air. All right, so this is the Wizard Comics Magazine panel. 25 years ago this year, there was a magazine called Wizard. It doesn't exist anymore. We'll maybe talk about why that is. So here are our lovely panelists. My name's Kyle Phegley. We have some other people here. We have Mr. Caylo.
I gotta live through this again.
I know, we're doing it all again. Wizard Chili Champion and current publicist for Boom Studios. We have Mr. Matt Senreich, co-creator of Robot Chicken and Fang's Head in a Circle. All right, guys, children have showed up. Watch your language.
Children, get out. It's Cheryl.
We have Mr. Ricky Purdon here in, who is the guy that did, remember that Metallica album cover? Miss Christ, the same guy who took this picture of Ricky at Wizard in the library in our offices.
Deep hole.
Famed Eternal Gary Ben Morse.
Did I write that or no?
No, Ricky wrote it.
You're welcome, you son.
Ricky's description of you, Gary, is Gary changes tacos into wicked ninja farts. That was the official Ricky. You were wondering what kind of high-class magazine that we work for. Now you've got some indication. And I looked everywhere, and I could not find an actual photo of Alex Segura. So but your greatest literary work instead I've used to represent Archie Post Alex Segura. And I put "and pals" for other people I thought were going to show up. But some people. Why do we do that? Justin and TJ, you're getting peed on by Bumblebee. That's from. And then the other guys didn't show up. I thought they would, but I texted them too late. So, but welcome. So I wanted to start with a little bit of personal history from each of us. Okay, so this slide represents the first issue of Wizard magazine that I bought, number 8, and then I think 13 years later, the first issue of Wizard magazine that I worked on, that had my byline on it, you know? So, but for each of you guys, some of you guys were there in the earlier days, some of you guys were in the middle days, some of you guys were there we're all working in the warehouse at Christmas days. So, tell me a little bit about your personal history of the magazine. Were you a reader first? Did you come on in the early days and work before you read it? What's up?
Yeah, I was definitely a reader first. I started reading Wizard before I even started collecting comics, to be honest. A friend of mine got me, had a copy of Wizard in his room, and I was reading it, and I was like, this is really funny. I really liked the medis that you guys did, and well, you guys, I'm telling like you guys. I really enjoyed the content of the magazine, and then it got me into collecting comics. Believe it or not, I was the reverse fan. I started reading Wizard, and then I started collecting comics back in the early to mid 90s. And I started working at Wizard in 1998. I got hired as a copy editor for the specials division. We did things like In Power and the Pokemon magazine and the Wildstorm special, in which I got to run amok with Jim Lee and the gang in La Jolla, California. And then I got promoted to assistant editor, then managing editor, and then I left in 2002.
To start a bubble tea shop.
It was 2002.
I left at 2002 to open a bubble tea shop, and that lasted for 2 years. And in 2004, my good friend Matt hit me up and said, "Hey, I'm about to leave town. I'm moving to LA to begin Robot Chicken. My editorial director position is going to open up. You should apply," because he had heard I was closing up the shop. So sure. And I re-interviewed, and I came back to Wizard from 2004 to 2007, and that was when I became the editorial director, and that was fun. I did a lot of the movie set. I broke out a lot of the movie coverage and TV coverage in the magazine. That was fun. But you know, filling Matt's shoes was not easy, but that was a good time.
Yeah,
Boy.
Matt, your origin story.
My origin story. I learned about Wizard magazine at the place probably that didn't necessarily always like Wizard magazine. I interned at Marvel Comics in 1991. And a magazine called Wizard had just come out, and was sitting on one of the editor's desks, and they were talking about it. And it was right before the whole Image, or right around the Image extravaganza had happened. And then I was just a comic book fan. I wanted to get into comic books after I graduated college. So in 1996, when I graduated, I applied and got it was like an editorial assistant position. It wasn't even a title. I was just kind of Joe Yannarella's bitch. Sorry.
Children in the audience.
Sorry. But yeah, I did that for a while. So I started with, it was issue 60, I believe, was when I started. And it was a blast. I mean, I was probably there in the silver age of Wizard, in the sense of it had just gotten its legs, and it was just the fun times working there. Nobody was stressing about sales. Everybody liked the magazine still before it all went crazy, and it was extravaganza. And then from there, I saw each one of these fools hired, which was wonderful, and might have even partook in some of them. It was just about finding campy, fun people to play with, which was really nice. We started up Toy Fair magazine when I was there, which was a blast. We started up the Toy Fair Theater when we were there. and we did terrible practical jokes, which I'm sure we will talk about later, but that was my saga. And I left in 2004. I cannot tell you the issue number, that's how much my memory just fades. But it was a grand old time. I can genuinely say I loved working at Wizard Magazine. So, until the end.
Yeah, I was a Wizard fan. Like Mel, I got into Wizard before I got into comics. The first one I picked up was that Caylo Shaft cover.
Oh yeah.
It was issue 6, and Wizard was never able to reprint that cover because of the...
There's kids here, Alex.
Yeah, but the legal issues. And to me, Wizard was always like kind of the gold standard. I did a lot of comic trade press stuff for Newsarama, and I actually went into being a journalist. I worked as a reporter. And there was a real eye-opening moment early on at Wizard when we were talking about something, and I remember Brian Cunningham turning to me and saying, "They bought an ad, we will write a story." And that just kind of crushed my little journalist soul.
I will say that only started later.
Yeah. So I came in around 2002, 2003, and I feel like I was at a really great nexus point because I got to see it. I think you had just left when I got there, but Matt was there, and I was still there when you came back, and Ricky was an intern. So it was like, I got to meet everyone, and it's funny how it became this weird family, because even people like Kyle, who I never worked with, you end up becoming friends with. So I don't remember a lot of the politics or craziness, so there was a lot of it, but...
we'll remind you.
Yeah, please do. And I think the highlight was probably interviewing Sarah Michelle Gellar, which I was such a huge Buffy fan. And yeah, I remember all the language from then, like the mega section and things like that, that now makes no sense, but then was just part of the monthly grind. So.
I read Wizard as a kid. I remember there was this, what word do I use? Not nice Australian kid I used to hang out with who had an issue, and I borrowed one from him. He was not nice to me. Gradually,
here?
By the time he changed his name to TJ.
He sent you with the kids.
By the time I got to college, I was working on trying to break into journalism, like Alex, my hero, and wanted to go and work in a newspaper, but I interned in a newspaper my senior year, and I hated it. So I was like, holy crap, I've got 4 years of education towards nothing. What can I possibly do? And I happened to write about comics on the internet. And I was wised up that if you write about comics, if you didn't want to write comics, you want to write about comics, you would naturally go to Wizard. And,
didn't you stalk Cotton and Andy Serwin at a show?
I did. I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 2004. I was trying to get a job. I hung out with Andy Serwin, Mike Cotton. Hung out is probably a generous word. I followed them around and just let them know that I was available. I was out of college. Not available in that way.
I'm like, who's this weird kid?
I met Mel. I met everyone. But what happened to me was I got my resume across Matt's desk as he was leaving. And so,
I hired him.
yeah, so that was like the last part. I think I somehow, like, it was in Matt's inbox when Mel came in that day, and Mel got me the interview. I came in, I started as a research assistant with Dan Riley. I worked there for about a year. The first thing I was assigned when I came in, they sat me in the writer's office with Mike Cotton and Rich Ho, even though I was not a writer, but they gave me an assignment to break DC Countdown, which eventually became Infinite Crisis and all that. So I spoke to Dan DiDio the first day I worked there, and that was just a joy. From there, I worked there for a few years. I got to do a lot of cool stuff. Probably the coolest thing I got to do was I did director's commentary on Crisis on Infinite Earths. Got to talk to Mark Wolfman and George Perez for 3 hours about that. And yeah, gradually that led to, I worked the DC beat, I worked the Marvel beat, and eventually I went to Marvel. And everything was still pretty okay when I left. But I blew it.
What did you guys do?
We'll go from there.
After I left. Yeah. Did people here read Wizard? Because when I was coming in, the lady was like, hey, "You can't go in. This is the Wizards panel." And I don't want this non-wizardry information to bother anybody. It was what I asked that because are people familiar with the commentaries that Ben would write about comics and stuff? There was an Infinite Crisis commentary, right?
It never saw light.
It never came out?
No, I remember because I had Jeff Johns. called me up and yelled at me. He's like, when? Yeah, sorry. The Infinite Crisis one was the lost one because I did it with Jeff Johns, I did it with Phil Jimenez, I got comments from all the other fill-in artists, and it just kept slipping, like priority-wise. It was just never able to make it in there, and I have the original file somewhere.
We'll publish it.
I should probably print that. Yeah, probably a good idea.
Yeah, give it to Russ at comicbook.com. He'll do it.
Okay, well, let's talk later.
Absolutely.
Another Wizard alumnus right there.
Yeah. So I started reading Wizard, I think when I was
wrote
like,
my Infinite
I'm a
Crisis?
yeah, that was it. When I was
Weird.
I think like 12. I was real young. It made it, whenever I'd see the covers, they freaked me out because they were so intense. Like Bishop with a purple cape on him. Like that is not for children. And so I didn't buy them for a long time. I was reading comics, and then I eventually started buying Wizard. And there was a point where you could buy Wizard and not really have to buy any comics because there was so much information that you were getting. So I was actually, I stopped reading comics regularly for a second, but I was still getting Wizards. And so then I went to college, high school and college. And in college, I got super into beer, and not knowing what I wanted to do with my future. So I was undeclared for like the first 2 years, and they eventually told me you have to pick a major. And I went and saw a career guide, and they were like, "What do you want to do?" And it's like, be a ninja. I don't know what to. I've never thought about this. And so she said, "What are your interests?" And I thought, "Okay, I like comics." And she's like, "You should get an internship." And I was like, "What's that?" It's a kind of beer. And so then, so she said, "You can apply to these places. Just look up the mastheads, reach out to them and see if they have internships available." I reached out to Mad Magazine, IDW, who only had 30 Days a Night Out, and Wizard. And IDW got back to me and they're like, "You're hired, come on over. We don't pay and you have to find your own house." But Wizard was like, "You're hired, we have a per diem," and then we had a family friend up in the Nyack area where Wizard was at, the Congress area. And so I stayed up there with him. This is 2004. I drove across country from Texas with my TV and my Xbox, and stayed at this guy's house about an hour and a half away from Congress, where Wizard was. So that was one summer. They invited me back the next summer. By that point, Matt was gone, so I stayed in the house that Matt had been out. But that house at one point also had Doug was there, right?
Yes.
Doug was there. Other Wizard people had lived there at different points. Cotton was there, Ryan Panagos, Alex, James Walker, who was a designer at Wizard at one point. All of us had lived through the house and just destroyed it. At one point when I was moving out, we had a big sack of mail and we just burned it all in the barbecue.
Grill?
The grill. A grill. We burned
He was a professional magazine writer, people.
Yeah.
He's really good at it.
We burnt a mound of paper in the grill, and it burned the siding of the house. And the landlord was like, "You have to leave, like right now." And so then, anyways, I got hired on as a price guide assistant. I worked under Ryan Panagos, who was the price guide editor. I was just thrilled to be at Wizard as a kid. I spoke so quickly and mumbled so much that John Gutierrez, who was the price guide editor for Toy Fair, he was in the same office as Ryan Panagos. And months later, he was talking to Panagos, and he was like, I just ran in there and I yelled a bunch of this crap and I ran out. And John Gutierrez turned to Panagos and he was like, "Does he have a learning disability?" Just because I was so pumped and like crazed to be there. Anyways. Then I went from price guide assistant to price guide editor, and then I eventually became entertainment editor, which is like Fun Police. And I talked to a lot of, I would do set visits and go out and talk to studios and stuff. But I was also the DC Comics contact when Ben left to go to Marvel. Alex
You were
had,
the DC Comics contact while I was the Marvel Comics.
right, and then
We would fight every
right.
And
And then Alex Segura helped me get a job at DC. I joined the marketing department at DC, then editorial, and now I'm at Marvel. That's it.
Man, how'd you get a job at Wizard? And he was like, "Oh, you email them, and if you can move to Congress, you have the job." That was pretty much the sole requirement to get a job there. It's like, are you willing to live in the middle of nowhere, north of New York City, but not in New York City? And the other thing is that, Ricky, you talked about like being psyched about being there. I know that from my perspective, guys who grew up reading the magazine and then in the later years got there, because the magazine had those fumettis where it was like the the people on the magazine's heads on action figures doing goofy things, you knew who everybody was. I remember Matt Powell, who's a guy who worked there for years with us, the first week he started, we're all in the lunchroom eating lunch one day, and Brian Cunningham, who was the editor, he was like the third employee in the history of Wizard magazine. Now he's the editor at DC. He had his Justice League and Suicide Squad and a bunch of stuff. But Cunningham was there, and he walks up and he's like, "Oh, Matt, you're the new intern. I got something for you. Hey, I'm Brian." And then Matt goes, "I know who you are." Everybody who read the magazine like got to know the people who worked there, which made it seem like a really fun place to work. And it kind of was most of the time. But I wanted to switch on to talking about some things, because when people read Wizard, they read, obviously for comics news and that, but Wizard had a lot of personality and had a lot of different departments. Magic Words was the letters column, which probably a lot of people know. Jim McLaughlin, who's still in comics, did it for a long time. My buddy Chris Ward did it. Last Man Standing was like fake comic book battles against people. Picks was originally called Picks from the Wizard Hat. I forgot that until I found it on Comic Magazine. I was like, that's the dumbest name for a column ever. But what was your favorite kind of like standard column part of the magazine to work on, and what was the worst thing that you were like, oh God, now we've got to do this every month? No particular order, just everybody thinks of something.
When the internet became a thing.
When the internet happened,
we started a column where we would put down links to like cool old blogs or stuff about that were comics related, and I had to head that column, and I hated that column every time I had to work on it, because I would have to sit in front of my AOL dial-up computer and look up links that were relevant, that would be fun and entertaining, and put that into the magazine. So I really, really hated that column. I forgot what it was called. Do you guys remember what that column was called?
It was called like...
Was it Logging On?
No. It was like...
You've Got Mail?
I don't remember.
It was like Net something, Net Surfing or something.
I blocked that out of my memory.
I just remember, this isn't about my favorite or least favorite thing, but I remember, just to give some context, when I interviewed, I won't say who I interviewed with, but I asked, because it was 2004, and I was like, so what are your plans to kind of like, push back against the internet websites? And I was just told, we're not concerned about that.
Yeah, that came up a few times, the idea that, maybe Wizard should have a website.
I wish you were in the management meetings when we had those conversations. No, God, there's so much I hated about writing stuff. Because you'd write something and all of a sudden you think it was like an actual, like a journalist piece, and then they're like, it's not funny enough. And you'd say, but I don't want to talk about funny when I'm actually discussing this serious topic about, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund protecting the rights of this other person. And they're like, well, put in some fluff. And I think that was the most, like having to rewrite pieces later in life like that were probably the most difficult. The best part was always doing the set visits. Like when that Spider-Man movie was coming out, X-Men had just exploded, and we had done barely anything on X-Men because Wizard had no contacts in Hollywood. They looked at me because I might have been the only person who knew how to socialize outside of the office. And they're like, you should go meet some Hollywood people. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. So they would send me on these like week-long trips to Hollywood, and they would say, just set up meetings. And I would go, and I would end up in like the offices of, Sony and Fox and all these places, and I'm meeting PR people left and right. And I finally got to this place where they're like, come do all this stuff with us. And I remember the Sony people, I still keep in contact with the Sony PR people who opened the door for Spider-Man, and we did a 12-month thing where they just kind of debuted stuff in our magazine for the whole time. I was like, I can retire now. I was like, I've done something for the magazine, and that was probably my favorite part.
It was great, taking over that spot, going to the studios and stuff. There was other people that you'd set up, but like they were actually Wizard fans too, so it wasn't just people like us, it was people in high-ranking positions who loved Wizard. And in later years, when I would go to set visits and things, the visual effects people would be like, oh, you're from Wizard? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, what's wrong with the magazine now? And it's like, I'm sorry.
After you're gonna have to tell me who said that, just so I know.
Yeah. That was the Watchmen guys.
I mean, the fun stuff for me was getting to write or getting to manage a project. I think like early on in my first year, Joe Yanarella, who got me in the door, and who also, like me, had a really like just journalism background. He was like, I want you to edit the Spider-Man special, and that was just fun because Spider-Man was my favorite character, so it was like merging my two worlds. And I just remember emailing with David Finch, who did the cover for the book, and I was like, me on my like sub-poverty wizard salary, like, can I buy the cover from you? And he was just like, just keep it. So I still have that hanging in my apartment because it was like such a not, like he just shrugged it off. I was like, you can have it. As far as stuff that was tough, I wasn't really into the pricing. I wasn't into the price guide, but the first thing they gave me when I came in was oversee the price guide. And I think I'm still thankful that Ryan Penagos came in because he was so into it, like calling retailers and figuring out the pricing that I easily phased out of that.
Now I'm going with you. Price guide was worse than the other stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And then I did the mega section, which was kind of a way to tease people about the other magazines. There was a manga section, there was a toy section, and there was a movie section, but I had no interest in any of those sections. But I was thankful to meet with people like Zach and like Anime Insider and just kind of get like, what's more important for you guys? And we'll translate it for Wizard. But you know, the bad stuff all was just kind of a pain.
It's funny because like the other thing about that, like, because people maybe don't know, like the price guide was what Wizard was known for a long time, and it was like if you're the price guide editor, you were calling retailers all day and saying, how much money is this worth? What are you selling this for? And like really trying to get an idea. And I think people sometimes thought, maybe sometimes Wizard did, I don't know. But like, you're just inflating prices because you're just trying to make money off of it, you're trying to do whatever. And it's like, there was a rigorous and annoying process. Like, if only we could have just made up all the prices.
I just remember sitting in front of the copier for hours, printing out the price guide, and then just hearing, well, we need more highlighting, we need more like movement, and just, yeah.
Working on the price guide, like the price guide was my least favorite thing.
Yeah.
We would call people all day. We would email people all day. When we would go to shows, we would look at the walls and we would talk to retailers to see what they were selling stuff for. We used eBay a little bit back then, but we had a FileMaker file filled with all the different comics and what the price were. And we would change the prices in there, and that would make it green or red if it went up or down, or if it was hot, it would get yellow. And I hated it. But I remember.
How many people here actually use Wizard for the price guide? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, I did.
Yeah.
It
was all fake.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But I remember as a kid reading it, and like if I open it up and like Adventures of Superman 700 or whatever was $5, I was like, hell yes! I've got that issue, Mom. I'm not throwing this one away.
Well, the other thing that I brought up is, and this is the thing that I never read when I read the magazine. I never cared about this. And then I learned later that people very much cared about this, and that was the Hot 10 Artists and Writers list.
Oh, man.
People know what this is. So this is like a 1994 Hot 10 Writers and Artists list, where like Jeff Smith is a hot writer. I mean, yeah, but you know, he's also a cartoonist, but he can't make the artist list or whatever. But apparently, like, unbeknownst to me until I worked at the magazine, this is what creators would complain to us more about anything. They'd be like, I've got the #3 comic in America. Why am I #7 on the hot writers list or whatever? Like, you have no idea, like. What? I never had to go. You guys are like leaving in because you had to do the meetings where you just like. How was this decided? What scientific method decided who was hot?
This is pure torture. I don't know if I even feel comfortable talking about some of this. It was a lot of battle, this thing. Like, there are creative people, there are business people, there are price guide people. It was so many people weighing into this to just pick out a number for an individual, and you try to involve yourself, and it was so nice to try to just be like, oh, fuck it. Sorry, language. Like, I hated this section. So.
But it was like a sliver in the back of the magazine.
There were backdoor dealings going on that I'm not even aware of. I mean, did you guys do any of this?
Yeah, we like later on we would vote on it, and then
Is that how we did it?
and then much later, much we would put together a list and we would run it past 3 or 4 people and they would weigh in, and then much later they started basing it on sales, so you'd start getting, directly on sales. So you'd get literally. Kirkman would enter the list because Walking Dead was rising up in sales, and it was a scientific thing. By the end, they were actually like algorithms to figure out who was selling the most. It was nice.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on torture. I want to spend time with a very important debate.
Oh no.
And that debate is, who was the real wizard mascot? Was it Dr. Doom? Was it the wizard bunny with the hammer of Thor? Or was it James Walker as keep squeezing them monkeys?
I think that last one is where the magazine went downhill.
Is that where we jumped the shark?
Yeah, we might have. I'm the wizard bunny all the way. I think that was that was everything I loved in this magazine, and even before I was working there, it was fantastic.
Do you know the origin of the Wizard Bunny?
Like,
why was it a bunny?
I think they just found a bunny costume at like a garage sale.
Does anyone have the story about Poof the Wizard?
Oh no, the wizard himself. This is the story of Pat. Pat, who is the creative director, and Justin Ackland, who worked on Toy Fair, is going to tell it with this mic right now.
Okay, I may have this wrong. when is that good?
Yes.
When the magazine was first starting, they had the whole, every cover had the purple cloak with the stars on it. So they wanted to have a wizard mascot who was like a wizard. He had a long white beard. You guys might remember that.
Yeah.
And they had a meeting, and it was like Gareb and Pat, and it was a much smaller crew at that point.
Gareb owned the magazine.
Yes, Gareb owned the magazine.
And Pat made the magazine.
When the magazine first started, it was Gareb, Doug, and Pat were the three employees, and and Pat was really the one who set the voice and the tone for all the magazines.
Yeah, and the creative would never be what you guys love without Pat.
Yeah.
I can only praise him enough. God bless him.
So they were trying to come up with a name for the wizard, and Pat suggested, as a joke, Poof, because it's a British term for a homosexual person. But Gareb was not familiar with that, and he said, yes, then the wizard's name is Poof. And
the way I heard this was that Gareb was on the phone doing an interview about the magazine to somebody, and they're like, what's your magazine about? It's like, oh, we do Prices of Comics, and it's called Wizards. Like, we have this great mascot, and Pat was like, the mascot's name is Poof. And Gareb was like, well, the mascot's name is Poof. And then it went into print without Gareb knowing that that's what he was doing. But that was Pat. And this is a good moment to bring up two things. One, we had other magazines. Did I turn this off? No, I'm not. I can't hear myself. We had other magazines that Wizard put out. Toy Fair is obviously beloved for the Twisted Toy Fair theater strips that everybody remembers, which really led to Robot Chicken, more or less, right?
Yeah, that's where I went to. I love that magazine. Tom Root, who's our head writer on Robot Chicken, is from Toy Fair magazine. We hired him for that. So yeah. Anime Insider, and then Inquest, which was a gaming magazine. And I had to find a version of Inquest because I always remember being in the office, and each quadrant of the office was broken down to one of the magazines. And the Inquest quadrant started out as a Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering magazine, and they had all the old covers tagged up on the wall in the office. And then at one point, it's 45 straight Pikachu covers, and then it went from Pikachu covers to 500 Yu-Gi-Oh covers. That was all, the longest running cover boy of any magazine of all time was Yu-Gi-Oh on the cover of Inquest. We don't have a ton of time to talk about all this. The Toy Fair 25th anniversary panel is going to be coming up at some point, right, Justin? You're in charge of that one.
2023 or something?
2023, guys, be in this room. 2023. But I wanted to talk about, pranks. Here's what's up with pranks, okay? For years, here's what's up with pranks, okay? Let's talk pranks. Real talk. Real talk. For years when I'd read the magazine, the thing that came up over and over again was the idea that the Wizard staff would go to the Chicago Comic Convention and then infiltrate superstar artist Jim Lee's bathroom and then steal his bathrobe. Over and over again, I read the story of the magazine. I tried to find a scan of it when I was going through my old issues for this PowerPoint. I could not find it. So then I just maybe somebody put it online. So I Googled Jim Lee Wizard bathrobe, and this is the image that came up. This is what I use for it. But Matt, tell me, did anybody actually ever, maybe Mel knows this too, did anybody actually ever steal Jim Lee's bathrobe?
Oh yeah, that definitely happened, having been a part of a couple of them. But what people don't realize to that story is Jim Lee didn't like it. It wasn't a prank to Jim Lee. He genuinely would get upset. The first time, very funny. After that, it kind of escalated to, what the hell are you guys doing? I'll just leave it there. There's a lot of stuff I can't say beyond that, but I have a great relationship with Jim Lee.
Well, the pranks was something again, I think the readers knew is something that was supposed to be in the office. When I got there, I thought pranks were going to be happening all the time. And it was mostly just filthy stuff stapled to the walls by the time I got there. But pranks that anybody remembers from Wizard.
Oh, I probably did most of them. For me, pranks were the only reason I worked at Wizard. The fact that they would let me get away with some of the stuff that I did was, Mel's been a part of some of the ones I've done to him, if you want to mention one of them.
I remember the management meeting had a big picture window at the end of the room, and these are a combination of all the editors of all the magazines, like the Wizard editors.
It's basically all my bosses.
All the bosses and all the executives. We would have this weekly meeting, and so during one of the meetings, and everybody's like facing the picture window. We see a body fall past the window. We're on the second floor of the building. And I remember Martha gasped. She goes, "Did you just see that? Someone just jumped off the roof." And
they got to that window so fast and knocked the screen off. Someone picked up the phone to call 911. I mean, my heart sank because I waited for the person by the window to start talking, and I had a walkie-talkie in my pocket, and I started holding on the button and tapping on it real fast. And Pat was on the roof, heard it, and throws the dummy off. And the point of it was going to be beyond that, was he was going to catch it and then pull the body in like it looked like someone actually jumped and got in. But before they did, the body landed, it exploded.
It was a dummy,
And I'll never forget this. Paul gets there first and looks down and he goes, "It's a dummy." And someone goes, "I know they were stupid." Like, this is magic. And what was probably the scariest thing was there was one guy, Joey Anarella, who just sat there the whole time like this. He didn't flinch, he didn't smile. It made me worry that he didn't have feelings inside.
My favorite thing about Joe is, Joe was like the adult at the magazine.
Yeah.
He made sure you got all your copy in on time. He was, he came from like
Close the door.
close the door. Oh God. Like he came from like a local newspaper sports writing background. Like he wasn't a comic book guy, but he came in to like whip the magazines into shape as they got bigger. And now what Joe did after he left Wizard, like we've all continued to do goofy comic book things. And Joe became the editor-in-chief of Bleacher Report, which then became this giant
He's
sports
one of the
website.
first 7 guys at Bleacher Report.
Yeah. And I always laugh because about a year after Joe started working there, The Onion ran this article, and the headline was something like, "Editor-in-chief of Bleacher Report will make you list things even if it kills you," or whatever. The joke was that the editor-in-chief was just like, "I don't care if you list the fingers on LeBron James' right hand or whatever, And I was like, they have no idea. They really got Joe. They don't know that they got Joe. They just like made it up, but like that was what Joe was like. But yeah, very serious. Very serious man.
what were some other pranks? I know that Wizard and Toy Fair used to prank each other all the time.
The pranks before you guys got there were more serious, I think. So the pranks, the worst one ever played, and this is terrible. And I can actually say I was not part of this. Someone left out cookies, like for the whole group to take, and or brownies. They were brownies, sorry. And they were eating these brownies, and what people didn't realize, and what's amazing is like everyone was like, "These brownies are terrible," and yet they would still consume like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And
Free brownies.
all of a sudden, people's stomachs started growling because what they didn't know was someone put X-Lax in the brownies.
That was the worst.
And there was a guy at the front desk who had a cast on, and it was the worst thing ever. And all of a sudden, you see it like starting to happen, and he like calls up. He's like, "Hey, can someone cover me?" And he starts, and he has to try to run to the bathroom with it, and he hops away with it without even his crutches. And he gets to the bathroom, and there's a line because there was like 2 bathrooms in the whole thing, and everybody was miserable. And everyone knew who it was, well, they suspected, but they didn't know. And Doug Goldstein was just like, "Well, I saw Pat doing it this morning," and just gave it up. And Pat just disappeared for the day because he knew he was just doomed. But that was probably the worst and most evil that had happened.
Mel, did you get a fax? Is there a prank that had you getting a fax?
Oh man, there was a prank. Shoot, what was in the fax?
It was like, I think it was like you got fired.
I got That's something.
It was like
it was
legit.
about a cover. It was about a Warner Brothers cover.
You like messed up a cover.
I messed up a cover.
Right.
I messed up brokering a Batman cover for the magazine, and the fax looked like it came from Warner Brothers, and it said you ran the wrong cover. I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, Joe just said to me in a straight face.
We had to get Joe to pull this off, otherwise Mel would know it was a joke.
He validated it. When he was involved, it was valid.
It was real. Joe made something real.
Legit, yeah.
Joe said to me in a straight face, "So Mel, would you like to resign, or would you prefer that we fire you?" And I was like, "What?" And then Pat just broke down. He could not stop. He couldn't hold it in. I was like, "That was the worst prank to play on someone." Pretending
You
to
saw
fire
Mel
them?
just go white. It was horrible.
Yeah,
I still have a scar. This is embarrassing. I mean, I still have a scar on my finger, and I'm trying to remember if Cheryl was a part of this one or not. We wanted to tie balloons and fill up an office with it. We'd always wanted to do that. What we didn't realize is how many balloons that takes. So we bought all these pumps, and it was before the electric pump, so we were like pumping these things. We were basically doing things we shouldn't. And so we spent like 4 hours doing like 2,000 balloons, and half of the office was full. Like it was only half. So I called Mike Fasolo at like 1 in the morning. I'm like, "Hey man, I need you to get me like 2,000 more balloons and meet me at the office." And he's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Just find them." Somehow Mike comes through an hour later, he has 2,000 balloons, and we get to finish the office. But from tying the balloons, I'm not kidding, I have a bump on my finger from where I would tie it that has not gone away. And I know I can point to it because it's the point whenever I tie a balloon now, it hurts. And that's where it's from, just because we were being dumb.
You should see a doctor.
I should say
Balloon doctor.
yeah.
I feel like they calmed down the pranks by the time we got there. A little
Yeah,
bit. I just remember stuff like falling asleep on the couch and waking up covered in stuff. But that was mostly just like living in that Nyack house. Yeah, that was my problem.
Yeah, I think Pat stopped. Like,
Yeah.
by the time we
Did
got
he?
there,
He retired.
Pat was really like literally buying like candy apples for us and things. It wasn't mean stuff ever. It was always very nice.
Yeah, Pat and I think egged each other on,
Yeah.
and the two of us together would do some terrible. Yeah, I mean that's just the two. That's a panel unto itself.
So I want to get semi-serious a little bit because it's been a few years since Wizard wrapped. I'm being for real. And people talk about it now because there's so many of us who still work in the industry. Like I feel like almost every seat in this room could be filled up with people who used to work at Wizard who still have something to do with comics or animation or video games or what have you. But a lot of people who only know the magazine, who never read it, think of this when they think of Wizard magazine. This was Jim Mallon's cover to, I swear to God, the Women in Comics issue of Wizard magazine. This was the cover of that issue, right? Because a lot of people have this association, I think, with the magazine as being like a kind of a frat boy magazine, and they ran hottest babes columns and stuff like this, you know? And so, I mean, how much do you guys think that rep to the magazine is it all deserved, or how much do you think that was like a distraction from what you felt the magazine really was?
Ooh,
Jeez.
I told you serious.
But I think by the time that I got there, I think that almost everybody on staff, the majority of people on staff, took issues like that seriously, and we're trying to get good comics into the magazine, and try not to focus on negatives, not focus on negative reviews of things or terrible stuff, but to focus on stuff that we liked as fans. And sometimes there still was that soul that would lean us toward that kind of stuff, you know, like a listicle in the front of the magazine that was, you know, guess whose butt this is, and it's like a bunch of female butts, and it's like, meanwhile you're doing like features on Bill Finger or serious features on artists who die early in their career, Seth Fisher, and stories on CBLDF and real features, or covering small press stuff that was like people's blood, sweat, and tears were going into, and they were just pumped to be covered by a magazine. But then that stuff is so creepy. And I mean, I think this is a much longer panel about how that may have impacted the industry as a whole, with this kind of stuff. But I'm not an authority on that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was always a battle between. Yeah. It was always a battle between kind of the old guard, who still, you know, felt they didn't. I almost felt like by the time we got there, the old guard didn't want to do this type of thing, but just felt like this is what we've always done. This is what Wizard is. I remember I took a trip to Detroit to write a story about Bill Messner-Loebs, who was the writer of Wonder Woman, Thor, all these other comics, and then had become homeless because he had no work anymore. I basically went and I spent 2 days with him, and it was, you know, he was a sweet old man, and his wife was a sweet woman, and I had this, what I thought was just a really good article on it, and I came back and I was told it wasn't sexy enough, and that I had to find, there was one like specific part where he had said, yeah, I almost contemplated killing myself. And they were like, you can get him to open up more about the part where he almost killed himself, maybe we can publish this, but otherwise we're just gonna shelf it. And I didn't, and we shelved that article. And that's not an issue of sexism or anything like that, but that to me kind of spoke to the way some people who work for the magazine could never fully let go of the, we need to be more shocking, we need to be more, more sensationalism. And it was sad because I think there was a lot of people there who really didn't want to do that.
Yeah, it went from it became an upstairs, downstairs kind of, there were 2 floors on Wizard, and like the business was on the top and the fun people were on the bottom. And, sorry. But you know what I'm talking about, like, you came downstairs. So, but no, there really was that kind of vibe to it. And what happened was, like, when I started working there, sales were good. Like, comic books were doing well. Like, it was like that Wizard was 300 pages that we were trying to fill, and trying to write stuff for 300 pages is a lot.
A month.
Yeah. So you watch the decline of the comic book industry and Wizard with it, and all of a sudden people are like, how can we save sales? Like, how do we get people to buy this magazine? Not necessarily read the magazine, but buy the magazine. And that was the biggest moment that once you saw that turn, it became very hard for people downstairs, because you would write stuff that you thought was good and then it would get thrown away or twisted like that. And it was hard having those realizations, and they only got worse over time. I was happy to make the jump to Toy Fair for a while. Like, it was great to be over there because you just have to make toys do silly things. But yeah, it was a very interesting. You learned a lot about business. Let's put it that way. I think we all learned a lot about business. Again, we're a bunch of 22-year-olds out of college living in the suburbia of New York. It was a very weird situation to be in for probably all of us.
Yeah. You got a sense of it was an industry. We came in as fans, really eager, and for me, it was my first real job in comics. I did Newsarama and other stuff before, and then you got to see the business side that,
And it broke your will.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it made it real. It made it a professional thing. Like, DC had expectations, Marvel had expectations. We had partnerships with other people. So the fun stuff, like the indie book you were championing, maybe didn't make it into the magazine. So,
because would it sell?
Right.
That was the conversation always. Will it help it sell?
All right, well, I want to turn it up in a more positive direction real quick, because here's what's going on. I scanned this. This is something I remember reading in Wizard when I was young. I don't know if anybody else remembers this feature. Pat wrote it, and
oh my God.
Steve Blackwell, who was the designer for the magazine for a long time, drew it. And it was a paint by numbers way to make an extreme superhero in the 90s. And you can tell, like, the body types are all the same, and you can make their names out of words like war, blood, kill, force, all, hawk, dark. I think dark's in there several times to make the thing. But I remember when Steve Blackwell left, somebody framed this and gave it to him. But this was the thing that was always indicative to me. What was great about Wizard was that, like, people think Wizard sometimes is a hype magazine, but like, people made. We wrote about things that, like, we knew comic fans cared about. If stuff got on the covers because that was selling, but sometimes we'd see what was selling and be like, man, we don't like that. But we also had an opportunity to make fun of things at the same time, which was a rare opportunity. So you had things like this, or just doing stupid things like when super pets go bad. Here's just a bunch of images of the various animals of comic books turning on their creators.
Is that an April Fool's prank?
This might have been an April Fool's prank. The April Fool's prank we haven't gotten into. Every year there'd be an April Fool's prank in the magazine, a fake announcement of comic. The one I remember was a dark reimagining of Count Chocula and all of those things. And people for years would write letters to Wizard to be like, when is that Count Chocula comic coming out? And it was never going to come out.
Yeah, it was the Alex Ross Wonder Twins. I got the most questions about.
But anyway, I'm going to kick this to you guys to say, talk about your favorite funny or silly things or features in the magazine. But I have to go to the airport. I have a wedding to go to. Ricky, you're in charge for the rest of the panel.
I'm the adult.
They want you to clear everybody up. I'm going to pack the car. I love you all.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it is weird. He has to go.
Go, Ricky.
I think, like, do you guys remember, like in all the issues, there would be funny captions underneath the pictures, or even funny word balloons, like just off kilter random stuff. they would pass around a proof in the office, and there would be stick-it notes on it, post-it notes,
Team comedy.
and you would just write funny things.
Like line, like one-offs.
Yeah, non sequiturs or something that had to do with something, and it was like, who can come up with the funniest lines on this? So it was like we were trying to compete with each other. We were trying to compete with each other, and he hit somebody with the door.
Perfect wizard ending.
But and if your caption got picked, you were like, I'm funny. We did it.
I know, you felt so good. You felt so validated if your caption got picked. This is coming from someone whose caption never got picked. I was not fun, apparently. But yeah, I remember just like the feeling of validation. If you
I
got
remember when
picked.
those started. That shows you how it got to the point where we would sit there and be like, God, I don't want to be funny. Like, we didn't want to do it anymore. We were like, there were like 8,000 captions that just started happening because I forgot who was like, they're funny, make more of them. And then we were like,
Do that.
we do it. You passed this clipboard. It was just a clipboard that went around with just sentences, and there would be 1,000 of them. Like, yeah, it just drove
Some super funny that were usable for another picture later. We just never held on to them. Do you remember the Halloween, like Halloween
Costume contest, yeah.
Were you there for the start of it?
I was not there for the start, but I was there early on for sure. Yeah, the Halloween costume contest was great. The other one that I like to point out is like we did, like Wizard World Chicago started.
Right.
So we all of a sudden like ran a convention, and I don't know if you guys all had to work the convention all of a sudden. So here we are as like editors and stuff, and we'd be flown to Chicago, which was great. But then we had to work a booth, and we had no idea what we were doing. So there was a Wizard wheel.
Yep.
And there were 8,000 prizes that we could give away, which is awesome. But at the same time, we're just giving away free stuff. And it was like, do you guys remember the pitch? It was like,
you
give us a category, we give you a question.
Yeah.
If you get the question right, you spin the wheel. If you get the question wrong, you got to
physical challenge.
And it's burned into my brain, like that stupid slogan, because I said it probably more than I've said anything in my entire life. Yeah, I don't know how much you guys had to do that.
Yeah, more and more, especially by the end, there were conventions in every American city. And
Some Canadian.
Yeah, some Canadian cities, Mars. And so we did it over and over and over. Yeah.
Sorry.
We got like 10 minutes left. Maybe we should open it up to questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Does anybody got any questions out there?
Oh, here comes one.
Yeah, there's a microphone in the middle of the room.
I'm going to start with this guy, though, because his arm's up.
It's not so much a question to some input. One of my favorite parts of the magazine, when you would do that pseudo casting call.
Yeah.
So you guys want to give your thoughts on that?
I think we were right once. Captain Kirk or Picard was.
Yep.
Yeah, he was Professor X.
That's it.
Yeah, we picked the bald guy in Hollywood.
Do you remember who got picked as Wolverine for that?
No.
Danzig?
Glenn Danzig.
Wow.
I remember Jesse Thompson writing in, who's the girl from the OC?
Misha Barton.
Not Misha Barton, the other one.
Rachel.
Yeah,
Adam Brody?
not Adam Brody, the other one.
Bilson.
Regardless, Rachel
Bilson.
Bilson. Yeah, I remember Jesse Thompson passing me the thing. He said, Rachel Bilson, aka the next Mrs. Jesse Thompson. And I said, how does the first Mrs. Jesse Thompson feel about that? And it's not my name.
What's your question?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Hi, my name's Matt.
Good name.
Thank you. Why not? Thank you.
Top name.
Yeah, that's great. No, thank you so much. I made it. I was wondering, sorry, I came in a little late, so I hope you didn't already touch on this, but I was wondering if you could talk about, you mentioned the April Fool's pranks, the prank, the larger scale one to introduce the Sentry as a Golden Age character that Marvel had forgotten about.
Yeah, were you there?
I don't know what that is.
Oh
God, you don't remember that?
Wait, the Paul Jenkins?
Yeah, the Sentry. There was a deeply interconnected relationship with Marvel to reveal that old files of Stan Lee's were found in a drawer.
No, I'm not part of this.
That included a drawing of a character called the Sentry before the Fantastic Four, and so we trickled it out over years or over months. It was like a news story that we found old art, and then we actually showed what the art was, and then they said, "Hey, we're actually going to do a project with this art." And then they unveiled the art, and it was a multi-part event, and it was going to be drawn by Jay Lee and written by Paul Jenkins, and we had interviews with Stan and people from back in the day, Flo Steinberg, just trying to recollect, like, oh yeah, I remember
And it
staying
was
on
over
the
right?
I was there at the very end of this thing.
Yeah, and then it was revealed like, no, it was all just a long story where we faked that it was a news
That's
thing.
evil.
It's evil. It's evil, but it was good. I don't know. The Marvel and DC worked closely with Wizard to get content into the magazine. So sometimes it could be fun like that, or it could be a series of ads, or it was a long-term thing like you had with Spider-Man, the movie, where it was a long rollout of content. So I think when the companies worked together toward the interest of the readers, it always delivered the best stories and experience for the readers too.
It was really interesting for me, working at Wizard and then being on the publicity side at DC, and then Ben was the DC person.
We hated each other.
It was weird.
It was terrible.
I just remember a lot of stressed out calls with Ben, just discussing like, can we get an extra page, or why don't you talk to this person? Or
I remember knowing Alex before he got the DC publicity gig, and like we were just like casually friendly, and it was great. Then you got the DC publicity.
It was just
gig.
like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner.
It was terrible. And then the minute I switched over to Marvel, like we were buddies again.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah. Wow. And here we are.
Yeah, and here we are all this time later.
Any other questions? Nothing? Yeah, up front.
Did any of you work I know when Wizard ended its press and they didn't have any more printed magazine, I know they made a switch to online. They tried to do digital magazine. Did any of you work on that?
I did.
How was that though? Was it? And I know it didn't last long though.
Was that when the internet became a thing?
The internet
That might have been what, 2009 when the internet came.
I think behind the scenes there was stuff that happened that people didn't realize. But I usually talk about this. But at one point, Pat McCallum, the longtime editor-in-chief of the magazine, left. And they brought in a new editor-in-chief named Scott Gramley.
Oh yeah.
Scott had worked at...
Wait, was it Scott Gramley?
Scott Gramley.
Oh my God, he was there way back. He was the first person who became my friend when I worked there.
In life.
Yeah, because I was like the newbie and no one talked to me, and yeah, he was the first person that's like, I'm gonna be nice to this kid.
Yeah, and he left. I think he went to a sports magazine or something like that.
He went to Maxim. He was at Maxim.
He went to FHM. He was the editor-in-chief at FHM, and then he joined Wizard. And so the magazine changed very heavily, the look and the tone, because Pat had so much to do with, I think, the soul of the magazine.
He was.
And then.
You gotta remember that, like, when Pat got fired, I mean, it was a traumatic experience for all of us, but you have to also remember, this magazine started out as 3 guys in a garage doing a magazine, and like 20 years later, one of those guys fired the other guy. I mean, it's like a friggin' Hollywood movie. It's ridiculous.
But the look of the magazine shifted, and the priorities of the company shifted, and things kind of got wild, and then they shifted to the digital magazine. I think when iPads came out and digital readers, they thought, oh, this is something that we can actually integrate into a reading experience, and it was far too little too late.
It was a good idea.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Justin Ackman.
Kyle from the future?
I'm back.
I was the editor of Toy Fair magazine, which is why I wasn't on the stage, but I kept interjecting. Oh, 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
But I was one of the people who was there when they shut the lights off on the print magazine, and I went over to the digital magazine, which was a hell of a thing. So it's and TJ, who was my second hand. My right hand. So there was this whole process where, like the guys had said, the office in Congers was like the heart and soul. It was in the suburbs. It was like we were our own little world. And then a couple years before it shut down, they moved everyone who was in editorial to their New York City office, which previously had been just sales. And so suddenly everyone who was living in the suburbs found themselves with this extra city commute. And then, so one day, they moved offices in the middle of the night, and basically there was only a small handful of people working there at that point. And it was a Sunday night, and everyone either got a call to show up to a different office on Monday morning or don't show up. And you got one of those 2 calls. And that was the beginning of the new company, the digital company, which did not last very long.
Wow.
And it was really, the entire editorial team at that point was me, Mike Cotton, Carlos Mejia, who was with me on Toy Fair at the time, and James Walker. And shockingly, the digital magazine experience only lasted, I think, like 4 months possibly, and then it was all gone. And now Wizard is just a convention company and does not do publishing anymore, to my knowledge.
Your voice even changed over the course of that. and then it was raining. So one question real quick, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, I was a big fan of Wizard in the 90s. I read it almost as much as, enjoyed reading it almost as much as I
was my time.
So anyway, I think it was Wizard number 18 that had a Youngblood cover and some darker image trading cards. So I have 5 polybag copies of those. About how much are those worth nowadays?
They're in the 99
And that's all the time we have. Multiplying 0.
But I think one of the things I wanted to make sure we said in this panel was that the experience of working at Wizard created a family with everybody. And even if we don't see each other or talk to each other every day, every week, or every month, or every year, when we see each other, it's like we just saw each other yesterday. It's like uncles and cousins and
no matter what
sisters
era
and
you were
brothers.
from, like if you didn't even work with the people, you felt like you worked with them. It created a mindset. Like it really did.
And even though there was a bit of an upstairs-downstairs vibe, you know, we were all family. And just one shout out to Hassan and Deirdre over here, who were upstairs people, the cool ones.
It's just funny, you can run into someone from Wizard wherever.
Anybody, if you're from Wizard, stand up. I'm just curious who is here that day.
Oh, she's still here.
Cheryl
Cheryl in the back.
But so that experience was really personal, and it affected my life, my professional life. I think I as a human being am different because of my time at Wizard, and I act a certain way because of what I learned at Wizard and the experience that I had. And I'm sorry that it's not still around to give that experience to people who are trying to break into comics. And I'm sorry that the experience for some readers wasn't as positive as our experience working in the magazine. But at least for me, it changed my world. So, but thank you guys for reading and for being a part of it and for coming. Really, it means a whole